thewellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives. This is Up for a Chat with Cindy O'Meara, Karen Smith, and Kim Morrison.
Here we are, up for a chat about the hottest topics that are important to you, inspiring you to awaken the change within. I'm Karen Smith.
I'm Kim Morrison.
And I'm Cindy O'Meara.
And I'm super excited, actually, because today we have one of my personal faves on the show, and I like to say he's mine. I know that that's just me taking ownership.
Excuse me, we met him together.
Oh, we did. Okay, we did. But he's been mine since then.
Okay.
So this is the amazing Sam Parker. Now, Sam, I'm going to just kind of go through a little bit of a something about you, but we really want to talk to you about who you are and what you're doing because, you know, when Cindy and I met you, you were in a very different phase of your life. You're a chiropractor, you're young, you're hot, you're married. You know, like there's just so much going on in your world. And I've been working with you personally now for the last 2 or 3 years. Is it 2 years or 3 years?
Oh.
3?
Did it ever stop?
No, I don't think so.
True.
But we've had the most amazing friendship and the most amazing connection and relationship, which has been like worth gold to me. And I treasure it so dearly that to watch you grow and to expand into what you're doing now is, you know, when I say I feel like you're one of mine, it's like it makes me feel so proud to know you and to love you and to honor you. And to have you on the show where we can actually share you with all of our listeners is something I think we've wanted to do for a very, very long time. So it's about time. Welcome to the show, Dr. Sam Parker.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Cindy. Thanks for having me. What an intro. How cool was that?
Hey, let's not forget the fact that I actually married him.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, thank
Well,
you.
I was at the wedding.
Was that before
I was at the wedding.
swallowing a fly?
Well, let's not go there.
Let's go there. I think we should tell that story. We might do that later on. Let's find out who Sam is first.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Sam, fill us in about you and your journey so that our listeners can get to know you a little bit and understand from our point of view why we think you're so special. But tell us about you. Who are you?
Oh, that's quite a big question, isn't it?
I know.
So we met by chance, or as a universal fate, shall we call it, when you connect the dots backwards. We met around early 2013, about February 2013. We were lucky enough to sit at a table in a massive big auditorium at the Brisbane Exhibition and Convention Centre, Brisbane Entertainment Centre, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Massive big room, and we ended up sitting at a table, and then Kimmy, you weren't there, but Cindy and Karen just plonked yourselves at our table, and it was one of the best nights ever, and got connected and had a chat. And after Catherine, my now wife, elbowed me in the ribs, so I knew who Karen was because Karen had spoken, but I hadn't met Cindy at that stage, and Catherine elbowed me in the ribs, almost broke my ribs. That's you and Karen Smith. So we had a great time. Really, it was great to connect with people who are living their inspired vision, or grabbing life by the balls, as some may say. It was great to connect with you guys, after seeing you speak and knowing your journeys even more so now. But it was really inspiring to meet you guys. You had a massive impact. You and the wellness guys had a massive impact on our lifestyle towards the end of 2012 and start of 2013. So it was quite a big change in our health and our philosophy around health at that time. And then finished off graduating at chiropractic college at RMIT University at the end of 2013. And as the stars aligned, as we're getting drawn towards the Sunshine Coast, I got to hang out with Mark Postles and the amazing team at Coast Chiropractic Kelowna as part of my placement towards the end later on in 2013. And everything worked out that we ended up moving up at the start of 2014, where I started practice, and this is where I'm hanging out in the back office in Jackie's office at the moment because Jackie's away, talking to you guys. So yeah, I mean, still a chiropractor at the moment. Had quite a big shift. I think about 3 to 6 months into being a chiropractor in 2014. Met this lady was coming in that I know quite well, and she's a bit of a blonde bombshell, and she's pretty awesome. And she lit a fire under my butt doing her speaker's fast track training.
Oh, you meant me. I'm thinking, wow, who's this?
Yeah, it's you. And realised I thought I was just going to kind of cruise through life and live on the beach and just sort of cruise through things. And then someone lit a bit of a fire under my backside and really started things in motion. And as that's evolved and the message has changed and the challenges of life and being an Aussie male and being now a dad has really shaped a new journey for me, which we're taking things at the moment. I think that's the best way to describe. So I'm a dad. Jacko is almost 2 years old. Jackson is his actual name, but everyone knows him as Jacko. And my beautiful wife, Catherine. So we're still on the Sunshine Coast, still practicing as a chiropractor. And in my spare time with all that, I grab life by the balls.
So what does that mean? Because I think that is a huge part of describing who you are. Explain that to our listeners.
Oh, yeah. Grab life by the balls. As of Friday, is a not-for-profit organisation.
Woohoo! Sam, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, go you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. So there's still a few more
that's brilliant.
things to work out, but it's all gone through. So yeah, that's
huge. Congrats.
Yeah, congratulations, Sam. That's brilliant, especially with what you're doing. So well done. Yeah.
Yeah. So Grab Life by the Balls is a proactive and positive men's mental health movement. So proactive as in before things go pear-shaped or before the SHIT hits the fan. But pear-shaped is probably more a nicer way of saying it for men's mental health. And positive as in I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counsellor. Positive as in like positive psychology. What's a fulfilled life? What's a happy life? What's a purposeful life? And that's what Grab Life by the Balls is where we're sitting. So we're not crisis, we're not prevention in mental health, and we're in between that, and so in between mental health as in crisis and prevention, as I mentioned, and then personal development. I think there's a language and stuff there that doesn't really meet your average guy, your Aussie bloke, your Aussie man, in a ballsy, we try and deliver our stuff in a ballsy, laid back, a bit cheeky, a bit humorous, very relaxed and very simple, practical way of going about things to, in essence, to grab life by the balls, which means to live your best life. So stop the or work through that inner voice in your head, that inner prick, work through the expectations of society, your good boy syndrome, and who gives a crap about what everyone else is doing on social media, and working through that and asking yourself better questions, which then leads to, okay, what is it I'm really good at? What is it that really, really motivates me? What's my underlying motivation, my underlying why, and where is it do I really want to go in life, rather than just sort of going through willy-nilly and trying to keep everyone else happy, starting to find out where it is that, what it means to, get up and grab life by the balls. What does that mean to you for each guy? So, yeah, we're a little bit different. We're a little bit edgy in between. There's no one really talking to Aussie guys in an Aussie way and relating to them. There's a lot of stuff out there that is designed to help guys, but there's no one really talking their language. And then if they're not talking their language, it's a bit hard to keep up with what you're talking about. And then there's a lot of pressure and expectation on how we go about living our lives from a lot of different sources. And guys are a little bit lost. Women are amazing and they're doing amazing things and they're really stepping up and becoming empowered and stepping up into a fairer, more equal society. I wouldn't say it's perfect just yet. But with that, I think guys have lost their identity. was going to say something else then. They've lost their identity. They're not really sure who they are, what they're on about, why they're doing it, and how to go about things. Because on one scale, we need to be more sensitive and more in touch with our feelings. But then at other times, we need to be really tough and to step up and take control and really use our testosterone, our masculinity in different situations. And there's this yin and yang balance that's not quite balanced at the moment in a lot of different ways, and guys aren't really sure how to be themselves and how to act in a society that's rapidly changing.
Sam, I think that's something that's always puzzled me about how the shift in the dynamic between masculine and feminine has affected the men. Because women, obviously women have been suppressed for a very long time, and the pendulum tends to swing in both extremes before it finds balance. So I've often wondered how men have actually coped with this great shift in terms of how displaced they've become, or how lost they've become in relationships where, they're used to having a subservient woman through previous generations, and now all of a sudden women are these powerhouses that want it all and don't take no for an answer and won't be subservient and won't cook and clean and wash and iron. And here's one we've prepared earlier, just saying. And so, I've been interested to see how that deeply affects the psyche of men, because it can't be easy, and women have each other to talk through what's going on. But I've wondered how men reconcile the shift and reconcile the change, because it's not like it's not like it's going to go back to the way that it was. So how do men reconcile that challenge?
Yeah, there's a lot of different angles, but we'll chuck it in here. Guys, I love the barbecue analogy, because you know where I'm going now. The barbecue analogy, women will, and this is very stereotypical, so no one give me too much of a hard time, but just generally speaking, women will sit around the table in the patio out in the backyard, and they'll have their wine and have a chat and discuss everything, and be pretty hard to get a word in, while the guys stand around and connect around the barbecue, and that's where they start developing a bit of mateship and connection, not necessarily always talking about stuff, but doing things side by side, like turning some snags over or throwing the tennis ball back to the kids playing backyard cricket or something like that. That's where guys start to connect. And I think it's a real tribal thing. Like some of the stuff that I've read, the research that I've read, it goes back to tribal days of how guys connect, and that's usually side by side. So going out and doing things, even if it is just standing around a barbecue, is where guys start to connect and develop that mateship. So with that in mind, I think it's with men's mental health stats in Australia, which are pretty un-Australian or pretty horrific, depending on which word you want to use there, it'd be a pretty good idea for someone to have an attempt at the world's biggest barbecue, because barbecuing's, how much more Aussie is having a barbecue, and Australia has no world records to do with barbecues. The actual world record for the biggest attendance of a barbecue is Mexico. I'd like to think we're better barbecuers than Mexico, and 6 men a day suicide in Australia, so 42 a week. So two very un-Australian statistics there that I think we're moving forward. Grab Life by the Balls wants to address by having the world's biggest barbecue at some stage, probably looking at next year. So that'd be one way of doing it, Karen, mateship and connection and understanding the guys do things side by side.
Yeah, because it is very interesting. I think about my Matt, who's quite the Aussie yobbo bloke. He's no snag. Pardon the barbecue pun.
Yeah, I get you.
But it's interesting, I often think about how those Aussie blokey blokes, they deal with the challenges that life throws at them, especially when, they can't necessarily sit around and talk about it like women talk about their feelings.
Yeah, I think there's a shift for that, but I think it's hard for guys on one level to do that, because we've never been taught to sit and analyse our emotion. Like if you're playing sport, you don't really have time to have a look at what you're feeling and how you're feeling and be able to discuss it. You've just got to move on and focus on the next play or the next solution, towards winning the game. So I think it's quite difficult for guys to start expressing that straight away, unless you're doing something side by side and get that kinesthetic part of your brain working with everything else. And then guys can find it easier to connect, to talk about stuff. And then I think at the other extreme, I think sometimes we get so attached to our story that talking about it sometimes is almost detrimental. There's good research to say that it is actually good for you to a point. But then after that point, you can just keep rehashing the same story and still not step up and grab life by the balls. So I think there's lots of different ways to go about it. But I think it's just understanding what Aussie guys are like and honouring them for how things have happened, how we've grown up, our culture essentially as well, and honouring that, but then using that to our advantage rather than telling guys that they should be doing this or this is how they've got to be or you should come and ask for help. Guys don't ask for help. How could a guy really understand what's going on for him but then go to a health practitioner and say, I need help? It's very difficult for guys to take that first step. And I think if we reframe it or do things differently like we're trying to do with what we're doing, I think it opens up more possibilities for guys by making them feel honoured, making them feel a bit more empowered rather than belittling them and putting a lot of pressure on them to act in a certain way which is outside of their nature.
Mm. Sam, can I ask you a question? I mean, for a lot of us, the work we get into is driven by a strong experience, family situations, work challenges. There's a whole lot of things. I mean, out of all the things that you've become really passionate about, what's the driver and behind Sam Parker running this Grab Life by the Balls?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Kim. There's a couple of stories, but the one that really sticks in my mind, well, there's two. One was I was seeing a certain male in practice, and he had an argument of sorts or something with his female partner, and in that course of that argument that was going on, something got thrown and it hit him. And the guy that came in after that had happened to see me was completely different to the guy that happened before that. And you could see this strong individual was shattered. You could see the way his whole energy, the way he held himself was completely different after that accident, that incident. I don't think it was on purpose, but things happened and he got hit. And I was just thinking, like, on the other end of the scale of what Karen was talking about, how, women have become so empowered, which is fantastic. And we definitely don't want it to go back to what it was. Guys are, slipping through the system as well. Imagine if that was the other way around, that the guy had accidentally done something and had thrown something and it hit the woman, what the reaction would be. Whereas for the guy, this was like completely foreign. He felt emotionally shattered from it, but didn't know what to do because of the way it would be portrayed. How do you really go about that? Domestic violence does happen to men, but it also, predominantly and more scarily happens to women at a different level. Seeing that happen and see what that did to that guy, and there was nothing really anyone could do, and thinking about what it would be like if things were reversed, that was pretty scary. That was quite a shake-up of how things are in society at the moment when it comes to that sort of thing. And then the massive change becoming a dad, I think that, that really shaped a different perspective of me. I think it really helped me evolve, along with the guidance and support of many, many women, including Catherine, my wife, and Karen and her in our inner circle crews that I've been in the last couple of years. But that evolution of becoming a dad was a purpose bigger than oneself. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That there's passion and then there's purpose, and there's purpose beyond oneself, a bigger picture look at things. And I think that's where things started to evolve. And looking at all these men's mental health stats in Australia, like 6 men a day, suicide, 42 a week, the financial cost to Australia with all that happening, more recent stats on the Sunshine Coast, where we all live, is 4 out of 5 men. 4 out of 5 suicides on the coast are men. And suicide on the Sunshine Coast is actually above the national average. And that the scary stat, and this is where Grab Life by the Balls I've found really fits now, is that 58% of suicides, there is no underlying pre-existing diagnosed mental health condition or disorder. So 42% yes, but in 58% of the suicides there isn't mental health issues before that. There's some stress. There's a lot of stress that guys to that point, but it's not sitting in the system. So we need to do something different, which is where Grab Life by the Balls come in. And the stat that makes me cry every time I talk about it, and I'm even about to tear up now, is that the stats are showing, and I'm sure everything's on the increase, but one of the latest stats that I saw is basically 48% or 1 in 2 people will have some sort of mental health condition or disorder in their lifetime, past, present or future. And to think that Jacko, my little 2-year-old boy, is going to go through something like that and there's nothing that I can do about it, possibly nothing I can do about it, scares the absolute crap out of me. And about that same time, I felt pressure on being a dad. So it was like, okay, I'm a dad. So, all right, we should have the picket fence. We should have the house now. We should have the 4-wheel drive with the car seats. We should be going on holidays to Bali. Insert all these other BS ideas. Really trying hard not to swear here. But insert all that pressure that you put on yourself because of what everyone else expects and what you expect of yourself as well, which we should come back to. That was like, it was totally draining. And then, I remember distinctly having a chat with some of the boys around some of this stuff. It sort of came up in conversation of what I was trying to get done and trying to plan and all that sort of financial stuff and getting a house and all that sort of stuff. And we were talking about it while we were playing golf, side by side, safe place to talk about stuff, asking some questions of guys I was hanging out with who had their SHIT together that I looked up to. And then they were saying it. Then as I asked these questions, these guys were like, no, mate, wow, whoa. And they started unloading on all the pressures and the expectation and all the stuff that they felt. And I was like, I feel like I've invested a lot in myself with coaching and personal development. If I'm feeling like this, what are other guys feeling? And then all these guys started saying stuff. And then to me, I was looking up to these guys and admired where they were with their life and what they'd done already. And I was like, if these guys are talking like this as well, like this must be everyone. And it's like, wow, maybe it is. And then fast forward to the most recent inner circle group I've been in with Karen. I wasn't sure how Grab Life by the Balls looked, what we were doing. We were still in its early days of where it is now and where it's going to. And I was talking to this awesome group. Both groups have been awesome. And these ladies in this second group were just like, I presented what I was up to, and their jaws were basically on the ground going, oh my God. And it wasn't until then that I realised that I had something to offer. And that was a real turning point. And that gave me some confidence as, I was on the right track, because guys don't really like anything or comment too much or do anything on Facebook or give you too much feedback when you deliver a talk. And then I realised I was really onto something. So it was basically Jacko and then my own journey and finding out that wasn't just me. It's pretty much every guy at some point, if not ongoing, who's going through some crap, but no one really ever mentions it. That was kind of a long answer, but I'm on out for a chat, so it should be fine, hey?
Yeah, you'll be right.
Exactly.
Stunning.
I wonder why we're going, through this. I'm listening to you and I'm going, this isn't the way it's meant to be. It's almost like society has created, as Jack Kruse has said to us, its own asteroid. But in this asteroid, we've created a rod in our backs that we can't be like our hunter-gatherer ancestors or our simple farming life ancestors or our herding life ancestors. And it feels like that there's a breaking point for everybody. So how do you address that? Because you cannot get out of this life unless you decide to, buy acreage and move out of life completely, which most people don't want to do, because for the most part, we have a lot of fun in this modern world of modern conveniences. But is it a brain thing that we can't come to grips with because we haven't evolved, or what is this?
I think there's a whole load of things. Going back to what goes on inside your head, and I think our own individual, particularly guys, that sense of failure, whether it's actual or perceived, not living up to our own expectations, like that failure, it like cuts deep. Whether it's minor to everyone else or actually a big thing, that can cut really deep. And I think that's a massive one. But there's other things that lead up to that, like these questions that we get when we're doing our presentations up at the mines and doing our talks wherever we go. It is about that conditioning. Like no one's ever really asked us, what is it that we're really good at? What really is your underlying motivation? And what do you want to do with all that? Where do you want to go with all that? It's the other way around usually. It's okay, so set goals, because everyone's got to set goals, particularly New Year's Eve, and 90% of those goals fail over the year because they're not really goals that we really want to achieve. We've been in a system where we're educated to, just keep going through all that conditioning and keep doing what we need to do in front of us, but we've been always focusing on our weaknesses. No one's ever asked us what our strengths are. Everyone's focused on getting a job that pays really well, and that'll enable everything to come so much easier in life. But money and happiness, or money and wealth and happiness don't really match up once you get to a certain point, which most of us reach in Australia just by being average, at our average wage. Happiness then drops off it doesn't increase as steadily as wealth does after that. So we reach that point there. It's not all about money or getting the good job. It's about what we really want to do and what really lets us, leads to an inspired life. What actually inspires us, rather than at one level, getting excited about going out on a Friday night or, hitting the beers, which I definitely did for quite a while there. That was a good time. That made me happy. But happy's only lasts for a little bit longer. Meaning and purpose are much more stronger ways of going about things. And we've never really been trained to ask those questions, or anyone opened us up to look at these things. And then you go, for me, finally finish everything that I was meant to do, like going to uni and having a career and all that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until my first year out of uni, it was like, there's things called values, and there's this whole other world of personal development that I never knew existed. All it was smart goals, and none of them were really fulfilling because they weren't aligned with my values. It's like, wow. And then the other thing is, like, we don't social media is amazing, but then, and it's taken off, 5 years ago, 6, 7 years ago, it wasn't really a massive thing. And now it's part of our lives even more so. And we get that dopamine rush every time we look at our phone and see another person comment or like or share or get traction on social media that way. But then we're also looking at what everyone else is doing. And if you're looking down on your phone, your posture changes, your energy changes, you use a different part of your brain. There's different hormones being pumped through your body. And then you start feeling a bit average anyway, but then you start looking at everyone else doing really amazing things and showing their highlight reel, because not a lot of people will talk about the crappy stuff, and we're constantly looking at highlight reels of people living their life and doing awesome things, but we don't get the backstory behind that. When they may be having a really hard time and this is their little release, or they've splurged on the credit card and they're going to have to pay off debt for another 3 years when they went to Bali for their holiday. So there's a lot of incongruencies there. We're comparing our worst self in that situation in a really bad posture, which adds stress to our body anyway, puts us down in the dumps a bit. So we compare ourselves then, or our worst self, or what we think we are inside, compared to someone else's supposed best self on social media. And I think there's a big gap there, and I think the lines of reality have been blurred there. So we take that almost as black and white and true, but we don't actually see the story behind it. So there's a lot of pressure with expectation from social media, our own expectations, but also not ever being asked or thought to think about what is our dream life and how do we want to live our lives. There's like a production line of how we go about that.
You know, Sam, I've shared at times dealing with a beautiful soul called Jacqueline, who we interviewed on here many years ago in her 90s. And this was her take on the world, because I think she even reiterated that over 70% of her clients, and she's a psychologist and a counsellor and a kinesiologist, she said that over 70% of her clients were men aged between, I think, 30 and 60, I think was the bracket she spoke of. There seems to be a lot of pressure, and I said to her, anxiety and depression is big for men. Maybe we can generalise and say men don't speak that much. She felt, and this is her words, she felt that us women had a bit to do with this. And this isn't about bashing the sexes, but it's an interesting conversation. She felt that women, she was all for women's liberation and obviously, like you even mentioned, equality and all of those beautiful things that are really important in this day and age. But she felt that we've almost taken it too far, where women are now on the front line, women are now running countries, women are now doing very masculine, heavy-duty jobs. She feels that's unravelled the family unit, where in many respects the woman or the feminine energy is to nurture and nourish a family, and the man's really, in a very generalised speaking, is to provide and protect. And yes, we can swap roles, and yes, of course, we can all do all of those things. But she felt that for a woman to have the children bath fed and ready, and the man sitting at the head of the table like it was back in the 1950s, wasn't such a bad thing as far as keeping the roles distinct and obviously more simplistic. Taking away arrogance and ego and domestic violence and those other hideous things that can occur with those things. What's your take on the man's role or the masculine energy? And do you think women have got a bit to answer for in this situation?
That's really interesting, Kim. I was just thinking about evolution. Just thinking of Mr. Dr. Bruce Lipton about his stuff, and one of the talks that he does about evolution and the Fibonacci sequence and where we're going as a human race. And I was thinking, that's pretty. I understand where she's coming from there, and I think it's a really interesting concept. But I don't think we're going to go back to that. We're continually evolving and changing. I don't think we'll go back to that in the same way that it was. I think, for me, one of the elements, I think, one of the steps or part of the process of grabbing life by the balls is controlling what you can control. Not controlling everything around you, but controlling you. Whether there's a heap of stuff going on around you or whatever, is that you can control what's going on for you. And then you can start seeing solutions. I think what was coming to me was that if guys know what they're doing and why they're doing it and have a purpose and a vision, and they've invested time and asked that question and came up with an answer over time, sometimes years, they have a better understanding of themselves. Then they can articulate that with their partner, with their spouse. And I think women have the same stuff going on. I think there's a lot of pressure and expectation and the same stuff we've talked about with men in a different context. But I think there's the same pressures women get as well as the men at the moment with how things are changing and how quick that's going. But I think if we're evolving as a human race, that guys individually need to figure out a bit more about who they are and their purpose, as well as the women, and then you start having a better conversation. If you've got a spouse, you're having a better conversation about how both of those things come together as a team and how you can both step forward and live a beautiful life, whether that is blurring of the masculine and feminine roles, say, in the household, I think is inconsequential as long as both people are stepping up and living a purposeful life as individuals and then as a family unit as well. I think if we're evolving, that's where we need to go, rather than, I think people blame and criticise, and we always blame and criticise and have arguments with the people we love most. Usually that's an internal reflection of what's going on for us, not necessarily it may be related to external things outside of our control, but internally we're feeling those feelings that we're trying to put onto other people, usually our spouse, usually the person we need to love most, because they're the ones that will not leave us straight away if we regurgitate all of that and throw a heap of crap on them. I think we look at what's going on for ourselves individually and we have a better understanding of that. I think we can step forward and step up into something new that we haven't quite reached in humanity, particularly in the Western world where things, we're living in the best time just about ever, according to health and disease stats and longevity of life and lifestyle and all of that. So I think that's maybe that's where I'd come from with that.
Bravo, Sam. Bloody bravo.
Good question.
Oh, I think your answer was just bang on. I think it's a beautiful evolution. It's a beautiful reality. It's a beautiful truth. And nothing comes without challenge, and nothing comes without growth, and nothing comes without expansion. And I love how you say that, in a family unit, it's inconsequential as to who plays what role, provided the family unit is doing that cohesively, congruently, and out of at understanding and connection to each other. I think that's so powerful. And I think there will be women listening to this thinking, jeepers, why isn't my husband like you? Honestly, I think that was such a insightful response to Kimmy's question. That was just amazing. Just amazing.
Cool. I think while you're going there, I think the other thing that is quite interesting for me when I get asked these questions and this sort of stuff is about the role women have played in my life. Like the freedom and scope that Catherine gives me and the space to figure out my own crap. I'm pretty slow. Catherine's much more evolved in this department than I am. She just gives me the space a week. It's getting quicker, maybe a week, and I've figured out there's something going on, and then we have a chat about it, or we work through some stuff. It's usually what's going on for me. Is the team of women that I've had behind me with all of this. It hasn't been there's been help from men in particular, but the women in my life are amazing. Like, I'm honoured that you called me, I'm honoured to call you, all three of you, friends. As it's been amazing, Karen, working with you pretty much side by side since we moved up here, and this evolution into personal growth and then the evolution into Grab Life by the Blokes. It comes back to the women in my life, that the women, that I'm the only guy in your inner circle, inner circle group, and I've had two great, amazing and very different groups of women help mentor and inspire me in your inner circle stuff. Like, I think it's, that the women in my life have also, had an amazing influence on who I am and what we're doing now as we move forward.
Yeah. No, well, I think it's a beautiful way to look at it in terms of how generationally we've evolved and generationally we've changed, and how, we are making steps now, thanks to people like you who are actually taking the steps now to make sure that that equality is maintained and that balance is maintained for our men and for our women, rather than trying to hold anything back. You're very much in a state of, well, this is how it is, and let's make sure that we keep grabbing life by the balls, because there's a reality, and I know that Kim and Cindy will agree with this. There's a huge reality about women, is that, in a relationship, we still want to be with the man who's a man. If we're going to be in a relationship with a man, I'm not saying that all women are with men, it just depends on our personal choice, but we want our man to be able to fight the bears if he has to. He must. Yeah, he's still going to fight off a bear if I'm being chased. So I think that there's that beautiful dynamic that the masculine and the feminine still plays, where we're united, we are stronger than divided. And I think what you're also doing is you're supporting men to understand the feminine and understand the masculine within themselves, as women are beginning to understand and balance the masculine and feminine in themselves. It's that's certainly what I've seen with the work that you've done. It's about bringing balance within, and then what happens without is a natural byproduct of balance, rather than trying to find our balance in the world outside. We're finding the balance in the world inside, and I applaud you on everything that you're doing. Tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives that you have engaged, some of the things that you're doing right now.
Yeah, so it's a rapid transformation with Grab Life by the Balls at the moment. There's a lot of momentum. There's a lot of things happening. So I've got an amazing board in place, which I can now say because we are a not-for-profit organisation. So I've got some really smart people around me that are great in their areas of expertise, which is fantastic. Couldn't do it without them. So I think having a team and stepping up from that is being awesome. With Grab Life by the Balls, I think we sit in such a unique spot with the name, with how we talk about things, our laid-back nature, how we embrace men for who they are without trying to judge them or force them into doing things that aren't particularly blokey, as Aussie blokes are. That's not to say that stuff doesn't happen, but we embrace who they are and meet them where they're at. There's no one really doing that. So at the moment, with rapid expansion, I'm trying to keep up and make sure that the purpose and the branding and lots of all this stuff is, and the message, the Aussie cheekiness and the laid-back nature of things still comes across when we expand. So we do 3 different things that we're working on at the moment. Grassroots on the Sunshine Coast. We hold very laid-back, mateship-based events around connection and meeting people. And it's funny, even though we don't advertise and say that we're going to talk about our feelings and stuff, as you build up that trust and that mateship and that connection, it's amazing the conversations that start to come out once you meet guys where they're at. So we have we have weekly events, we have stuff going on every week on the Sunshine Coast. We're just making sure that that formula and our message is congruent. And seriously, tomorrow we can have groups around Australia, but we're just, at the moment, the board have quite rightly pulled my head into line a little bit and making sure that they, as a structure, and a very good branding and a good system as to keeping that message the way it is and keeping the groups running the way they are. So that's the grassroots thing, which we're working on. Watch this space. Number 2 is what I mentioned before, was a shameless plug before about the world's biggest barbecue. I think that's so quintessentially un-Australian, both the men's mental health stats in Australia as well as that we don't have a world record with barbecues. So we're working working on that with some close friends of yours, Karen. Hey,
yes,
that was quite funny. And then we've got I suppose a business. I say corporate, but then I don't know how where you class like building sites and mining stuff. If you class that as corporate, but basically, Blokey Industries, we have in the process of starting a couple of programs in the mines and very quickly elsewhere. We're already in discussions with other locations about what it takes to grab life by the balls. So they're short and sweet. They're very practical talks. They're basically ingredients as to what it means to grab life by the balls, to live your best life, to step up and you know, I was almost going to say grow a step, but you know what I mean.
Dear, oh dear.
In your own way. So the idea is to give the framework or the kind of the protocol to follow, but then you add in your own ingredients and you make it yourself, and it still turns out to be your way that you want to live life, essentially. So there's a very structured program which is also being vetted by our psychologist on our board. So it does have. I'm not no psychology background or anything like that. I'm not a psychologist, but it does have, it is backed up by research. We just deliver it. I deliver things in a very matter of fact, very laid back, very Aussie way. So they're the 3 things that we've got going on at the moment. There's plenty of other stuff in the melting pot, but they're the main 3 at the moment.
So if any of our listeners wanted to follow you or to find out more about what you're doing, what's the best way that they can research you?
Yeah, there's a couple of spots depending on how you consume that type of information. The website is grablifebytheballs.com.au. There's plenty of things on there, and I try to keep that updated. It is an active site. It needs a bit of work. That's one of the other things in a melting pot as things rapidly change. But that's the best spot to find us. Otherwise, if Instagram or Facebook is your jam, at Grab Life by the Balls Movement is where you can find us. But if you head to the website, you can find all those links. We're also on LinkedIn. I'm very accessible. You can send me personal messages via the Grab Life by the Balls pages or the website. You can get in contact quite easily. They're quite accessible with that sort of stuff these days.
Sam, I'm wondering if you could explain your work, your life, your passion, your drive, your humour, everything that you do. When I look at how you live with purpose, is it, or could you explain to us, if it's the case, that your work in chiropractic does flow into your personal life and now Grab Life by the Balls? And if it does, how does that all intertwine with its ethos and its beauty and its amazing philosophy?
Oh, well, yeah, well, that is part of, chiropractic has been a big, and Mark Postle's influence with that, with philosophy and taking things out into the universe. He's quite a big thinker. You guys know Mark, other people may not. But yeah, he's quite a big thinker, a very deep thinker. So his influence has been massive. But all the dots along the journey, you can link them back, I think, to what's come through. And I think, in essence, to answer that question very simply, is that Grab Life by the Balls is just an extension of who I am, and I understand that a lot better. I'm much more comfortable about who I am and how I portray myself and what's real for me, and that is that really aligns well with me. There's nothing hidden. I'm definitely not perfect. I'm not the guru or anything, but my life is just a reflection of Grab Life by the Balls, and me being me is Grab Life by the Balls at this stage, and I'm looking forward to that evolution as we grow as an organisation for that not to be the case. But at the moment, it's just me being me. And I'm a lot more comfortable with that after hanging out with Mark Postles and Susan Steinhardt, if you're listening, who was a chiropractor in our office and now runs another practice on the Sunshine Coast. Watching her go about her business in the office was quite intimidating to start with. Now, Susan's amazing chiropractor, gives so much, so powerfully, almost scarily present sometimes, and really gave a lot of herself. And I was like, I can't do that as a chiropractor. Like, you're amazing, Susan. I want to be like you. And I was comparing my weaknesses to her strengths. And then part of this evolution of understanding myself better was understanding what I did really well, but also knowing that there was something more to give, because I could see Susan so on purpose and so dynamic and inspired with what she was doing. I wanted a slice of that. And I tried very hard for a long time to make sure that was chiropractic, and I felt a bit guilty and ashamed that it wasn't chiropractic for a while. And then as I grew, particularly with Karen's guidance and everyone else, as I started stepping up into this new me, I suppose, I started embracing all those things that were me, like taking big concepts and talking about them in a matter-of-fact, Aussie, laid-back way. Knowing what I had to offer was, just by being me, was much more powerful by keeping things simple rather than knowing all the technical terms, but actually making them simple for people to consume was a big part of chiropractic, particularly Susan and as well Mark and Sally and everyone in the office here. So that's the chiropractors that helped me define who I was and where my strengths were, and then I've just applied them to Grab Life by the Balls. And the underlying philosophy of Grab Life by the Balls comes from the chiropractic philosophy of basically on one level reconnecting man the physical with man the spiritual, or on another level basically what is it to live your best life? What is it for you to be healthy? Is it merely the absence of symptoms or pain, or is it actually stepping up and understanding maybe there is more to just being healthy? Maybe I can take it to another level of healthiness. And in this case, our aim is to do that with mental health, not just say, okay, you don't have an issue, you're fine, there's no problem, whereas in fact we still feel like shit on the inside. Actually going to guys, okay, this is what we've got. These are some things that elite athletes do. These are things that can help you get out of the shit. But if you keep applying these and keep asking better questions, you could go to a whole new level that you don't even know about. And that's the underlying that's, like grab life by the balls. Like I can't exactly remember the story. I have to make up the story about how we got to that, but we're looking for a name like that. And I think just grab life by the balls just epitomizes everything that we're on about with, all the learnings that I've had through having a crack at cricket, traveling, as well as, chiropractic profession and the philosophy, the essential philosophy of chiropractic, going back to its more modern conception just over 120 years ago, about 125 years ago. From right, Cindy, you'd know that. But yeah, that's all the dots. Everything that's happened has come back, and is aligned, and that was there for a reason. And then I've stepped up and owned who I am, and that's a reflection of where we're going with Grab Life by the Balls, embracing that. Like we're on 7 News on the Sunshine Coast the other day at one of our grassroots events, our coffee, chinwag, bacon and eggs every Friday morning, 6:30 a.m. And for those at Moolba, families welcome if you're listening on the Sunshine Coast. And I made sure that I wore my cap, that I didn't shave, that I wore my singlet, because that's how I would turn up anyway on a Friday morning, because I wanted to be real. I wanted to be genuine, and I'm much more comfortable in that, and I want other guys to be comfortable in that as well.
Sam, you have given us such a fantastic show today. We are thrilled to have had you join us today to talk about the movement that you've created and, of course, the necessity of it. I just want to reiterate for all the wives and mums out there who are thinking that their kids or their husbands could be interested in this, where can people find you again?
grablifebytheballs.com.au, or just Google us these days, Grab Life by the Balls. Facebook and the website come straight up.
Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared with us today. You've been on point, and I still say bravo to you.
Oh, thank you. Such a pleasure to be on for the second time. That's pretty cool.
Yahoo!
I'll go back and listen to that old interview and see what I was talking about then. But it's absolute pleasure. Thank you for each of you individually, Karen, Kim, and Cindy, for helping me along the way. Kim, you've been massively supportive when I've been a bit cheeky and got in front of your groups that you talk to. Cindy, for letting Howie out every now and then. Howie's been an amazing resource. I'm glad to have him in my life.
God,
your support to open up a new level of health for us and our family has been amazing. And Karen, yeah, you just rock my world. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
We love you, Sam. You're an amazing young man, and I think for everyone listening, it would just be extraordinary if the world thought the way you do. I think you just always highlight that there's always another way, and I think that's the most important thing that I've ever learnt from you, is your incredible generosity to open up and share yourself, but also to really, truly, openly, absolutely lovingly want to embrace men for their power, which of course in turn enhances us as women and families. So thank you.
Thank you.
Big love. So for all of our listeners, we have absolutely enjoyed today's show, and hopefully you guys have got as much out of it as we have. There is such a need for our men to connect and collaborate. So if you guys are thinking, after listening to today's show, that you want your husbands to at least listen to the show and at least know that there's options out there for them, please make sure that you do that. And if you've got any questions that you want to ask on behalf of your partners or your kids, and also, if you've got questions yourselves, just head on over to our Facebook page at allthews.facebook.com/up-for-a-chat. You can also do the same thing at allthews.thewellnesscouch.com/up-for-a-chat. But make sure, most importantly, that you join us here next week on Up for a Chat, when you get to become part of the ripple effect that's changing the world. And ain't we doing that, my friends? We're going to see you on the ride. Bye for now.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/TheWellnessCouch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.